Hello students, today we will be studying about Clostridium, the organism Clostridium. Okay, now let us see about the history of Clostridium. It was first seen and isolated by this person called as Emily van Ermingham. It was isolated from yam, the food source ham, okay, in the year 1895, and there was also an outbreak of food poisoning in sausages. So this is the basic history being in Clostridium. Now let us see about the classification of Clostridium. It is a bacteria, so it belongs to domain bacteria, class Clostridia, order Clostridiales, family Clostridiaceae, and genus Clostridium. Now if we have to see about the morphology of the organism, it is a gram positive and they are high spore formers. The the characteristic feature of this organism is they are spore formers. Again, based on the presence of spores, they can be classified. That is, the spores could be terminal, that is, the spores are present at one end of the rod. It could be subterminal, that is, slightly away from the terminal region. They could be central spores also. So based on the presence of spores also, the organisms can be classified. They produce acid as well as gas during their metabolism, and they most of these organisms, they produce a toxin, and that is how they cause food poisoning. They are obligate anaerobes, okay, and they are saprophytes, and they are proteolytic in nature. Most of them are pathogenic in nature. Now these organisms, they are present in soil as well as the intestine of mammals, some of the intestine of some of the mammals. Okay, now how did the name Clostridium come is because these organisms, they appear spindle shaped because of the presence of spore. Okay, when you see under the microscope, they appear spindle shaped, and in Greek, spindle meaning cluster, so that's why they have given the name Clostridium. Now which media they can grow into, because they are anaerobic in nature, obligate, most of them are obligate in nature. They cannot be grown on any basal media that is present in our labs. They require anaerobic media, and hence Robertson's cooked meat media is one which they easily grow on. They do not have typical colony characteristics, but however some of them, they have large colonies, irregular edges, and they are translucent when they grow. Okay, and some of them, they have small colonies, and some are non-hemolytic. However, some of the species of Clostridium, they show hemolysis, that is beta hemolysis, they show with smooth edges. Now coming to the important species, it could be Clostridium botulinum, Clostridium perfringens, Clostridium difficile, and Clostridium butyricum. Now all the species that I have mentioned here, all these are associated to food-borne diseases. There are other organisms, other species also, like Clostridium tetani, which causes tetanus, but that's not associated with food, and hence I have not mentioned it here. The first organism, that is Clostridium botulinum, it causes botulism, okay, a disease called as botulism. How does it cause this botulism? Now how did this name come, botulinum, Clostridium botulinum? Because this was first seen in sausages, this organism, as I had told you in the history itself. And in Greek, botulus meaning sausage, so that's why the name has come, Clostridium botulinum. It produces a toxin, okay, botulinum toxin it produces, which is a neurotoxin, that is, it affects your central nervous system. Okay, what does it do is, this neurotoxin that is released by the organism, generally it is released during sporulation. Okay, it blocks the acetylcholine and affects your synapse. Now what is this blocks your acetylcholine and affects your synapse? is every time you have to do any action that is maybe involuntary or voluntary, any action that has to be done by your body, a signal has to be sent to your nervous system, and the signal comes back, and that's how you do your action. That's, suppose you want to lift up a chalk, or you want to pick up something. Signal is sent there that you have to pick it up. A signal comes back that to your hand, telling pick up the material or pick up the chalk. But here the message or the signaling is blocked here, and that is what is blocking of the synapse. Maybe you want to pick up the chalk and you are not able to do that, or the activity is reduced. Okay, there are different types of botulisms. Okay, that's wound botulism. That is, if you get this toxin into your body through some cuts or wounds. As I had told you, this is present in the soil. So if this organism or if this toxin enters into your body through some cuts or some injury or some wounds, okay, it can enter into the body bloodstream, directly attack your central nervous system. So that's called as wound botulism. Infant botulism, that is, if the children are affected by this, generally any kind of food that the child takes, generally this organism is present in the food that children take is your honey. The organism can be present in honey, okay, because this honey cannot be cooked or it cannot be heated, so it can be present in honey, and if the honey is consumed by the children, it can result in infant botulism. And intestinal botulism, intestine is you are consuming, any person who is consuming this um, the organism or the toxin, that is ingestion through food, and it enters into your system. How it enters, let us see. Okay, so that's called as intestinal botulism. There's another kind of botulism, that is iatrogenic botulism. Now what is this? You would have heard of this one kind of treatment that some of the people undergo, that is, or you can see the film stars undergo, that is a Botox treatment. Now what is this? It is this toxin, the botulinum toxin, is been injected into the facial muscle. What it will do is, this toxin, it is given in very small quantities, in very very minute quantities. This Botox toxin, botulinum toxin, which is called as Botox, it will paralyze the facial muscle. Because it paralyzes the facial muscle, the muscles will not age. They will stop the aging of the muscle, and hence there is no wrinkle seen on the face. There is no aging of the facial muscles seen. So that's called as a Botox. Now if this toxin is given in a slightly higher doses, then it will result in something called as iatrogenic botulism. But that's very rare, if only if the person takes the Botox toxin. Now let's see about this toxin. This toxin, it could be of different types, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, based on what basically it causes. It's associated with canned food, or the food that is preserved for very long duration, or which is uncooked food. Generally now this is the era of eating salads. So salads are greens, or the ones which is not cooked. So organism can be present. I told you it is present in soil, and if you do not cook the food, the organism will not get destroyed, and also the toxin will not get destroyed. It enters into your system. So through uncooked food and preserved food for a long time, canned foods, you know that canned foods, there is very little or no oxygen present in the canned food. There is no air present in the canned food, and hence easily the organism can grow, hence because they are anaerobic in nature. How can we see the food has been contaminated in canned food? That is, the can itself appears bulged. That's because of the gas accumulation. I told you organism produces gas as well as acid. So there is the can appears bulged, because of gas accumulation. And the food, there is when you open the can, there is a foul smell because of the acid production. Then also it is associated with meat organism can easily grow because it is proteolytic in nature. It results in proteolysis, so the meat appears black in color. So also the meat appears pink, that is because of the acid production. So if these kind of things are seen, it's better to avoid the organism. As I told you, there are different types of toxins. It blocks the adenoacetylcholine, which affects your synapse. I told you it is the activity or the signaling activity. Now when you take in the toxin, that is through ingestion through food, it enters into your gastrointestinal tract, it enters into your intestine. From the intestine it gets absorbed into your bloodstream. From the bloodstream it goes and attacks, or it goes and affects your central nervous system. Okay, now this toxin, it's basically, what are these toxins? They are proteins. So proteins means they can easily be destroyed by heat. You all know that. So this toxin also, if present, it can easily be broken down, or it can be easily disintegrated, denatured at 100 degrees centigrade for 15 minutes. Now if the toxin enters into your body, how long is the incubation period? It's between 18 hours to 36 hours. So within this time you start getting the symptoms. Now what are the symptoms? Basically the symptoms are, as I told you, it's the blocking of the activity, or the signaling is blocked. Okay, so general type of thing, it starts with the weakness of the muscles, okay, which starts with your face, then it's goes on to the neck and the rest part of the muscles. So there is double and blurred vision, there's drooping of the eyelids, there is slurred speech. Now all these things are muscular, if you would have seen. There is difficulty in swallowing, maybe you want to swallow but then it's not allowing you, the signaling is not sent there. You feel that the tongue has become thick and heavy, okay, and there is dryness of the mouth, entire muscle weakness you see, and the breathing difficulty. This one particular thing that is seen, that is the lock jaw, LOCKJAW. You would have seen this. Lock jaw can happen because of many reasons. This is also one of the reasons. You would have seen the person opens the mouth and they are not able to close the mouth. That's called as a lock jaw. This happens for few seconds, but then the frequency increases as the accumulation of toxin is there. I told you that this organism can also affect children, infants. Okay, now what are their symptoms? There's poor feeding seen, that's difficulty in sucking also. There's lethargic appearance or behavior of the infant. This constipation, and the cry is very weak or poor. So these are the basic symptoms that is seen. The one important thing is lockjaw, you should remember for this one characteristic feature. Coming to the pathogenicity of the other organisms, that is in the initial slides I had shown you other organisms, Clostridium perfringens, Clostridium difficile, Clostridium butyricum, all these causes just your gastrointestinal infection or food poisoning. So they cause food poisoning, tissue necrosis, bacteremia. All this is because of the toxin that they release. They are enterotoxins, and these are the toxins that is present inside, and they are released during sporulation. What are the symptoms? The general symptoms, just like gastrointestinal symptoms, that is diarrhea. Okay, there is abdominal pain, there is vomiting, there is fever, there is cramps, abdominal cramps. These are the basic symptoms, and it generally it is there for few days to weeks. The incubation time is 6 hours to 24 hours. Now, what is the concentration of the toxin that when entered into your body, you may get the disease? As low as 1 milligram of the toxin is enough for you to show the symptoms, for your body to show the symptoms. What are the food associated? As I had told you, generally the uncooked food or the food that is cooked and preserved for a long duration of time, generally in canned food, refrigerated food for a long time, okay, for months together. Uncooked food, that is your salads, etc., and also easily present in meat and poultry, because these are the organisms who can grow on, who are proteolytic in nature. They degrade, or they have the capability to degrade the proteins. Now, how do you prevent? That's there in your previous slide itself. Cook the food well before consumption. Avoid eating canned food or preserved food, with the food which is preserved for very long time, for many weeks or many months. Okay, and if there is leftover food, it has to be refrigerated for -4 degrees centigrade, and it has to be preserved, or it has to be refrigerated within 2 hours of the preparation. Don't keep it out for a long time outside. Okay, and it has to be reheated at least for 72 degree centigrade before the consumption, but best is to avoid eating the leftover food. Treatment: the person is generally kept in isolation, and the it's the surgical removal of that affected area. If it becomes too much, it can be treated by the antibiotic penicillin along with this. And antitoxin, that's if it's not the organism that has entered, or if it's only the toxin that has entered into your body. So antitoxin also could be given. That's a toxin, could be toxoided. So these are the different treatment procedures for the organism. And so these are the different ways as to how you can control, how the disease proceeds, how you can control the disease. Thank you, dear students.